The workshop is going to cover grant basics. It's going to cover grant basics, basically preparing to write a grant proposal, grants research and understanding the RFA, the makings of a strong proposal, proposal writing and application process, and award and reporting. I'm going to ask you to hold questions until the end. We'll leave plenty of time for your questions. And I'm also going to provide my email address. So whatever doesn't get answered during the course of this workshop, I encourage you to use my email address. Feel free to contact me and ask me your questions. I'll be happy to provide any answers I can. So I'm just going to jump right in here because I'm known for carrying on, especially if I start telling stories, go like this, don't tell any stories because I'll use up all the time telling stories. But I'm going to gallop through this. And I think what you're going to get is a smattering of and a good sense of grants from start to finish, but probably not the detail you're looking for. And again, I'll send you right back to my email address. First and foremost, when you're thinking about writing a grant, make sure you know what you need the money for. And by that, I mean, be able to articulate why your project's important, how you're going to spend the money, and you should know that you're going to be accountable for for every penny you take in. So you're going to really want to know where that money is going to go and particularly what the outcomes and deliverables of using that money will be. One little sort of blanket statement I'll make right up front is that a lot of people approach grant projects without the detail in mind. That's the most common mistake new grant writers make, is they're really good at overview and philosophy and even compelling need. But when it comes to statistics, metrics, detail, both in the proposal side and the reporting side, people tend to fall short. So approach this whole thing really knowing you're going to want a lot more specifics than you ever imagined. Be aware that some grantors want to know that their investment in you is an investment in the common good. And even if the proposal doesn't spell that out, it's always in the back of a grantor is basically an investor in you. And they always want ultimately for you to succeed, and more importantly, for your success to affect a greater good. And so keep that in the back of your mind too. For example, rather than saying you need grant money to make equipment purchases that will improve food safety standards on the farm, which will ultimately result in, excuse me, a higher profit margin, say this instead. Say that the grant, that grant money to make equipment purchases that will improve food safety standards on the farm will minimize foodborne illnesses and will result in a healthier community. So you see, you've worked in the greater good, and where every chance you can get, kind of put that little piece in there. Sustainability is key here too. Be certain that you're able to sustain the progress that their grant award is providing you long after the money runs out, and use every opportunity to assure grantors that. If you're going for a first grant, the grantor may not know you, may not have a track record with you, has no reason to have confidence in you. So pushing the sustainability that after the year is out, or the 2 years, whatever the grant period is, we will be moving this project forward by doing the following things. And usually every application or proposal asks for that anyway, but if they don't ask for it, keep it in the back of your mind. Consider carefully if there really is a need out there for what you're proposing. I've worked with so many people who have a great idea and they're so enthused about it, they haven't really thought through the fact that to them, this is the most important thing in the world. To a grantor who funds all over the nation, may not be so much. Make sure that the need is as compelling to others as it is to you. For example, to some funders, feeding hungry children is far more urgent and compelling than helping you to increase operational efficiencies. However, if increasing operational efficiencies results in your ability to provide more food for hungry children, then emphasize that compelling need and that sense of urgency in your proposal narrative. Excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. I hope it doesn't start croaking in the middle of this. Grants often trend with local and national issues. So when, for example, when concern about the future of pollinators hit the press and media, many grant opportunities popped up around protecting pollinator populations and habitat. Consider if your proposal touches on any of the hot topics swirling around us these days: food justice, soil health, and of course, climate change. Is there anyone else doing the same thing? This is another common mistake that people make, which is not doing the research to make sure no one else is out there. And in fact, at MOFGA, me as the grant writer was guilty of that. I once got a comment back on a proposal we made saying, you might have wanted to look around and realize that over at University of Maine, they're doing the same thing as you. And because funders hate reinventing the wheel or funding something that someone else is doing, or worse, doing better. Good news about that is we got turned down that year. That wasn't the good news. But the next year, which is this year, we did get a grant because we did do our homework. We had a very unique project that no one else was doing. Also, if you can find partners or collaborators to join you, funders love partnerships and collaborations. I think I'll change a slide so you don't have to just keep listening to me. So grants research, you need money for a special project that checks all of the boxes. Actually, before I jump into this, I want to add that there's no one size fits all. So in this overview of grants, some of this stuff may be relevant to what you're looking for, and some of it may not. I'm just trying to cover all the bases. And understand too, I'm coming from representing a nonprofit. So a lot of 27 years of my grant writing history has really been focused on nonprofits. So if I miss the needs that you need as an individual for a particular grant you want to apply for, just catch me on the Q&A, or again, go after me on email and I can address those things more directly. But anyway, so example, you want to create a model farm whose entire purpose is to provide food for homeless shelters, but you need money to do it. So where do you start? You may need to begin with doing a little grants research. And while there are professional grants researchers, usually with multiple funder databases, who can scare up opportunities you never dreamed of, they're also quite expensive. And the easiest way to start is for you to simply Google it. I actually do quite a bit of grants research, and you know, for a big entity that's going after big money, it's probably good, you know, use of finance. But I'm assuming for you guys, you don't want to be spending money to make money. So I Googled funding for farming for homeless shelters last night just to see if it was if anything would come up. And while I didn't come up with a whole lot, I did see that FarmAIDs funds this sort of thing. So FarmAIDs is a nonprofit. They use the money from the Farm Aid concert to support farmers, and they do a lot through nonprofits. And they do fund this sort of thing. So Googling worked. And if I were actually going after that kind of money, I'd pick up the phone and I'd call them to discuss my project, which you can do. I mean, it's a smart thing to do. And I'm quite certain if they weren't interested in my project, they could send me to 2 or 3 funders who were. So that's a good beginning. Next, I Googled farming for homeless shelters, and I found all kinds of interesting articles and websites of similar projects. And from there, I could study the websites and fish around to see who their funders are, after which I would go to the prospective websites of their funders and check out the parameters and criteria to see if my project might fit. So research projects starting with Google, not a bad idea. Okay, studying websites and 1099s. Never apply to a foundation or another grant resource without thoroughly reading their website, particularly what they fund and what they don't fund. Nothing peeves a grantor more than a proposal that's not spot on relevant to their interests. So you want to, if you think you've identified someone you want to go after, read their website thoroughly. I can't stress that enough. And make sure that the things you're going to be looking for are to make sure that the grant size or the grant size range fits your needs. If you're going after a $5,000 grant and their bottom line is 50, don't go after them. Find out when the next deadline is. That's very important. You don't want to miss a deadline. Review their eligibility requirements. Do they fund individuals and businesses or just nonprofits? And sadly, great for MOFGA, not great for individuals. Most funders fund nonprofits and shy away from the individuals, but the individual potential grants are out there for sure. Study their past grantees and see how you fit in. And if on their website they haven't listed the past grantees, the next thing you can do, free public knowledge, is go to GuideStar, one word. And GuideStar will show you their 1099 tax forms. And on the tax form, this is just a piece of a very lengthy GuideStar 1099, but here you can see on the left-hand side who this funder funds. And then down the middle in blue, you can see how much they give. And that gives you a good idea of what you can ask for. If you're going for the first time, look at the 6,000, 7,500. Don't look at the 80 and 28. Those may be for second time or third time awardees. But the GuideStar shows you a lot. It also will show you if they give away a ton of money or just a little bit of money, which should factor into whether it's worth your effort or not. What else do I want to tell you here? So don't forget to go to maine.gov if you haven't already seen their grant landing page. And if you have a lot of time, Google USDA grant opportunities. And if it's a government grant, you've got to read the RFA or RFP very thoroughly. The acronyms, RFA means request for application. RFP means request for proposal. I'm going to check the time because, okay, good. Request for proposal. And this is just the first page of many, many pages for an ag development proposal opportunity that has since passed. But I showed it because that's what that first page looks like. So you know you're on the right place. And you read, it's a lot of stuff, but read every word very carefully because you don't want to put time into a government grant. They take 2 to 3 weeks to produce without being sure that you have a good chance and your criteria meets their criteria. I mean, your project meets their parameters. I also wanted to tell you to make sure that you take a good look. And this is a little tidbit that not everyone thinks of, but I always do it and it's come in so handy. Get a copy of their application and of their report templates, because once you have those, then you can see if you can actually pull this off. Oh, sorry. This is actually the Agricultural Infrastructure Investment RFP. So they come in different forms and shapes, but it's program guidelines and eligibility. So you read through that and you can find out if your project or your needs fit what they're offering. And I suspect some of you may be thinking about an AAI grant. So I wanted to use it as an example whenever possible. The application for the AII investment program is actually not all that onerous, not as onerous as government grants are. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of flicking through these as examples without giving you a chance to really study the content. But I just pulled some of the application questions off of the application for the AII. I'm going to stumble over that one. And you want to read those questions for any funder you're going after and know that you can answer them without fluff, with real concrete stuff. before you enter into a proposal. And the same would be true about the reports. This is a sample report from one of the funders. And the reports can go anywhere from 15 pages to a simple one-pager. But read through the reports, because then you can see at the end of a year what you're on the hook for. And if the application questions don't daunt you and the report requirements are all doable, you're home free. You're in good stead to apply for a grant and possibly get it. What else here? If you're lucky enough to find several opportunities for your project, you can apply for them all. Some grantors will say, are you applying for anyone else in this? And you tell them yes, and who they are, because if you're lucky enough to get multiple awards, you can just go back to the grantors and say, well, we're lucky enough to get this other grant, but we'd like to use your money for such and so. It's all negotiable at that point, but don't be shy if you find more than one proposal opportunity to go after them all. Or you just pick the one that you most closely fit because you don't have the time or the energy to do multiple proposals. Consider when you're looking at that GuideStar or reading websites, consider if they give in your geographic location or at the financial level you're requesting. And consider also how much they give out overall. For example, if it's a funder that gives 10 awards nationally, you're probably not going to get one unless you have an in. But if they give 30 awards locally, yeah, that's a much better possibility. And also check out if anyone you know, any of your contacts knows any of the personnel or board members of the granting organization. Personal contacts they help immensely. And in many cases, they're the difference between getting a grant and not getting a grant. So looking at, if it's a private foundation, looking at who's on the board, looking at where they live, thinking who you might know, who might know them, who could walk your proposal through. Let's see, okay. We've already talked about matching the funder's interests and parameters, but that compelling need and the sense of urgency. Some funders just give us the facts. They don't really need to be pitched, but in the nonprofit sector, more often than not, they want to know what the compelling need is and the sense of urgency. And that's really critical to a strong proposal. You also, I'm going back to that business about metrics, stats, and details. You also, more often than not, will have to describe measurable deliverables and outcomes. And they have to be written with, the whole proposal has to be written with clarity, has to be succinct, no jargon, well organized, not repetitious, addresses funders' parameters directly. So back up there to the deliverables and outcomes. It's not good enough to say we expect that this is going to really improve our farming ability, which will really improve the community. Really improve means nothing to a funder. They want to see numbers. How many people will be affected by this? Who will be affected? How will they be affected? And try to stick with facts and shy away from your own opinion, which is really difficult for me. Let's see, what else do I have here to show you? Oh, a compelling need, describing a compelling need. This is what I mean by that. When you have a narrative opportunity and it says, tell us what this need, why you need this, or why the community needs this. I have an example here. Maine dairy farms are in peril. That right there states a compelling need right up front. Clear, hits you over the head. Then it goes on to say, and recently 14 organic dairy farms lost their contracts with Horizon. This project directly responds to the emergent circumstances of these dairies losing their source of income. So compelling statements, pithy, to the point, and hit them over the head with a 2x4. Expected outcomes. This is a sample of what I want to really instill in you. If they say, define how you'll evaluate the success of your project, including goals, metrics, and outcomes. take them literally and put it down in the order they ask for it. So they said, including goals, right up there is goals. Then they said metrics. Well, there's our list of metrics, and then outcomes. There's our list of outcomes. You can do it in narrative form. You can do it in bullet form. You can use numbers. You don't have numbers to use. You can use what other evidence you have, but don't leave anything hanging. If they said timeline up there, then we'd have timeline beneath outcomes. If they said timeline and we didn't address it, that might disqualify our proposal. So you got to be very literal with what both the report and the proposal requirements are. Let's Oh, one thing I haven't explained to you, and I really should, is the difference between an application and a proposal. Sometimes the two terms are used synonymously, and quite often the funder will ask you to fill out an application. And then when you filled out the application, which might be a page or two of just facts about your business, your employees, your income, et cetera. And then the proposal is where you pitch them. Another arrangement that often takes place is the funder will ask you for an LOI, which acronyms run wild in this business. LOI stands for a letter of interest. And when they ask for an LOI, you send them simply a letter, and you tell them what your project is, what your hopes are, your objectives, your goals. And they'll tell you a page or 2 pages, just enough information for them to then look at it and think, yeah, we want to hear more. Then they invite you to submit a proposal. Sometimes they'll want LOSs, another acronym, and that stands for letter of support. And that means you've mentioned somewhere in your LOI, or maybe you haven't even done an LOI, but they want to know, or the LOS is anyone who might be involved in your proposal, or either tangentially or directly, is writing a letter of support saying, this is why I think this is a great project and I really hope you fund it. And for government grants, you're going to need a DUNS number. I can't tell you what DUNNS stands for, but I can tell you it takes several days to get. You'll pick it off the proposal will tell you where to go to get it, or you pick it off the government website. But you have to have a DUNS number, and it's been more than one sad person who worked for weeks on a proposal only to discover that they should have applied for a DUNS number and ran out of time, and their proposal was disqualified. So keep that little acronym in mind. Always they're going to want detailed budgets and all kinds of attachments, so be prepared for that too. Mostly government grants, but the other ones as well. Let's see, in terms of, let me see. In terms of time, I already mentioned government grants take a couple of weeks. For nonprofits, I think less so for you. The grants I've seen that are trending toward individual needs or individual proposals tend to be a little simpler and a lot less length. In terms of process, if you're a solid, pithy writer and you draft out your answers for every question on the proposal and then go back and edit, revise, and rewrite. If you don't have that skill set, then you ought to consider drafting your answers as best you can, and then having someone else edit, revise, and rewrite. There are people for hire who do that, but probably you know someone who's a decent writer who can have a go at it. Develop your proposal logically, chronologically, and exactly on point with the information that's being asked for. And it goes back to my example of goals, objectives, outcomes, etc. Don't go off topic, but do provide the information they're asking for in the order that they're asking for it. As I said before, don't voice unsubstantiated opinion like we believe extreme weather is going to become more common in New England. It's a natural thing to write. It's true, we believe it. But what they want to see is irrefutable examples whenever possible, or quotes to make your point, like instead of we believe, quote, according to the 2021 World Climate Summit report, extreme weather events will have increased twofold in New England by 2027. So that's not opinion, that's a fact. That's what's gonna give them confidence in your proposal. Use bullet points freely, short, clear sentences. You don't have to write high-handed. You just have to write convincingly and with clarity. And if they give you any word limit, don't feel like you have to use all those words. Use only as many words as you need to get your point across. Don't repeat. I can't tell you how many times I've read other people's proposals where they have a paragraph that makes a point, but they still have a lot of words left. So they put in a couple more paragraphs that are just a reshuffling of their point. Don't do that. Move on to the next question rather than repeat. Once your proposal has been drafted, then edited, revised, make sure that you proof, and proof again. And then have someone else proof. And double check your math on the budget. So I didn't include much on budgets in here because that's a whole other workshop. But much like writing the proposal, you need to be able, we got a barking dog. Sorry about that. You need to be able to provide a lot of detail in budgeting and live with it, because if you propose a budget and every grantor sends out their own template usually, so you don't have to worry about template, and you'll see clearly the information they want. But if you propose a budget and then COVID hits or extreme weather changes things, you're not going to end up spending the same amount of money on the same things you thought you were. And that's okay, as long as you call the funder and say, look, these circumstances, here's what we want to do instead. And generally funders are okay with that if it's a good exchange for their money. What you don't want to do is forget to do that. Reach the end of your grant period, sit down with the report to fill in the blanks on the budget, and discover that you've got a lot of explaining to do. Funders don't like to be blindsided, and they're perfectly understanding that your project will change. And certainly over the last 2 years, a lot of people have come to learn that their projects are going to change substantially due to unforeseen circumstances. Let's see. Plan to submit your proposal at least a day ahead of the deadline, particularly if it's an online submission, because you never know what kind of technological quagmires you might find yourself getting into. Government grants, we try to submit those a good few days at least, or a week in advance, just because they trip you up quite often. I have been moving pretty fast, so forgive me if I've skimmed over a lot of things. I'm going to go on to award and reporting. So if after you hit submit, the waiting game begins. And generally it's 1 month to 3 months on the average before you hear from the funder. And then you get an email or an actual letter telling you you're getting an award. It's very possible that what you asked for is not what you get awarded. And actually, since I have a little bit of time, I'm going to back up on that. When you're asking for an amount, and every grantor makes you ask for an amount, let me just ask a quick question. Is the dog barking interfering with my talking?
No, Karen, you're fine. It's kind of just in the background.
Okay, good. It's not my dog, not my house, so I didn't know if I should worry about it.
Distracting, I would say if someone could mute the dog or mute the computer where the dog is barking. I am having trouble, hearing both.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dog stopped barking for a moment anyway. He's 2 floors down. I'm surprised it's so noisy.
Oh, it's your neighbor. I thought it was someone who didn't have their microphone muted.
No, that's why I was asking. It's on me. Okay, I'll just barrel on ahead. So I was talking about the amount that you ask for. Your research will tell you what the range is that the funder is willing to fund, but your budget will tell you how much to ask for. Don't overshoot. If they say they're giving out grants between 10,000 and 50,000, don't go for the 50,000 just because you can imagine what you could do with that. Go for what your project is actually going to cost. And don't go under or over their parameters. Because in the end, you're going to have to justify every penny you pay a year later, every penny you take a year later. So you want to make sure you haven't overshot on that one. Every now and again, it's very rare, but every now and again, the funder may ask for their money back, but that would, I actually have never heard of that. And that would be because something really terrible happened. So I don't think we even need to worry about that. So when the award letter comes, you want to make note of, usually on the award letter, they'll tell you what the reporting requirements are going to be. And you're going to want to record that and make sure your report is filled out to spec and it's turned in. Definitely, it's turned in definitely on time. No funder wants to get the reports late. That's bad form. Within a week of receiving the award, it's really good form to send the funder an acknowledgement letter. And sometimes they ask for a signed contract as well. And the letter should thank them graciously and reiterate what wonderful accomplishments you'll be able to achieve with this funding. And that's a really important piece because going for grants is like going after individual donors. It's relationship building. Acknowledgement means that you're grateful, and it also is a way to open the doors of communication to your grantor, because most awarded grants you'll get an award the next year and the year after that, if you do your part and you do it well. Anything else I want to tell you about that? If you get a rejection letter and you'd like to apply to them again, in many cases, you can go back to the funder, you can thank them for the opportunity to apply, you can tell them you would like to apply in the future, and would they be willing to give you some guidance on how to improve your proposal. And that is a really good thing to do on many levels. One is they may be candid to tell you why your proposal failed. And the other is, now the dog's trying to come up here. This is going to be exciting. Sorry. Totally lost my train of thought. The other reason it's really good to ask them about why they turned you down is because you're showing that you're serious about this project. You're going to continue to pursue it, that it gives you an opportunity to talk with them. So what they didn't read in your proposal, they may very well ask, well, we couldn't support you because we had way too many proposals come in, but we liked what you were doing. Tell me more about such and so. And any relationship you can build with the funder is going to be a good relationship for the future for you. Let's see. Before, if you get an award, before too many weeks go by, return to the report template and map out the deliverables that you're on the hook for, so that you don't get to the end of the year and have to scramble to get your project done. Grantors have the right to ask for money, like I said, they have the right to ask for money back if the activities funded were not accomplished. But if the project changes midstream, you just contact the funder and have a discussion about it. Keep funders close to your chest if you get an award. In other words, don't ignore them. Use every opportunity to be in touch with them. And always you're reassuring them that they've made a really good investment in you. They're going to be really happy they did, and kind of grease the wheels for the following year to ask for more money. What I've discovered in the nonprofit sector is that funders, there's probably a 75% chance if you get an award, you're going to get one the next year and the next year. So they like to support people over the long term. Because so many grant reports require statistics, specifics, and metrics, it's important to set up record-keeping systems early on. And it's the same with your bookkeeping. And once again, I know I'm repeating myself, but it is so important. Once again, make sure that you go to the report and study what those deliverables are going to be and what the budget's going to ask for, so you can structure how you use the money throughout the year based on how you need to report it out. In my terror of running over, I've provided more time for questions and answers. So if we want to shift over to question and answer mode, we can do that right now.